We're started. Julie, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. This is a podcast about consulting, and I know you're not a consultant, but you're integral to the consulting world. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what is Cultivate Talent?
Yeah. So I guess actually I'm a consulting team of one now. So I guess maybe I can
Wow,
be
you
in,
are a
be in
consultant.
that world too. But yes, cultivate talent. So I guess call it a 2020 decision for me, but have been in tech and tech services, and talent, HR, recruiting, all the things for almost about 20 years and decided, when is perfect timing to go out on my own? Well, there isn't perfect timing. So I'm going to do it now. So
Yeah.
have been doing that for about the last year, supporting, like I said, tech services, consulting businesses and SaaS companies, a lot of focus around startup to scale up stage. And it's a fun and interesting and exciting time to be talking about all things talent for those businesses.
That is exciting. Um, I was just wondering, what is the job market like for tech right now? I know the economy is really weird, but what roles
Yeah.
are hiring and what's it like out there?
What roles aren't hiring is probably the
Yeah.
the question. But it's such an interesting time. A lot of trading seats. I think one of the terms I like the most, everyone talks about, great resignation, many different terms around it. It's like that great realignment is what I think resonates the most with what I'm seeing is
Yeah.
I think folks are really looking for what makes sense to them kind of in this next phase of their career. They've reassessed what's important, what they're looking for. So a lot of call it realignment out there and kind of people moving around, things that are important to folks, they're really honing in on, and
Right.
they have the opportunity to do so in this market. May look different, right, in the future, but right now they have a lot of opportunities and a lot of ability to do that and really prioritize. So I would say what roles aren't hiring is probably the fair question there. Uh,
Yeah. It is hard to find people, yet it feels like the economy's crashing. So it's kind of a strange,
it's such a strange dynamic.
yeah,
And I'm like, well, not an economist. I think it's going to be an interesting, maybe call it beginning of next year. By that
right.
point, we might be having a different conversation on this podcast. So who knows?
Yes. It's a good problem though, is that means you're busy. It means we all have jobs. I work for Atrium and I know you know some people there.
Just
I,
a few.
on occasion I do interviewing when they let me. And it's I've done in the past and it's like the one question I have for you is as an interviewer, how do I know if someone's a good fit?
Yeah, great question in general. So first, I would say, really, as a company, have you all defined and really looking at what does that mean? So when you think about like a culture ad, or I like to use culture ad versus fit specifically
Yeah,
because I think that there's a lot that folks can add to a culture
right.
that may not even be prevalent today. But what, really defining what does that mean? So what are your values? What does it mean to actually live those out, not just, on paper? So how are they
Uh-huh.
living and breathing? What are those behaviors look like in the company, and what does success look like in terms of folks that are thriving, in terms of adding to the culture there? And how do you look at questions that you ask? And so I think if you first dive into that, really define that and understand it, and then are able to ask questions that really hone into, not just because for you all it's kind of a two parts within consulting businesses. It's what does that look like from a culture ad perspective within your business,
Yeah.
and then what does that look like from a culture ad perspective to the clients that you serve? So it's almost kind of a two part as well, and makes it even more dynamic. So I would say, well, it sounds really simple. It takes takes quite a bit to really understand how that's living and breathing. And it's good to involve many people from the team in that, to checkpoint like, this is what it looks like, and really understanding from their lens, what does that look like? And, what does it look like to be kind of adding to the culture in a really productive and positive way? And really talking to new hires about that. So
Right.
a lot of times it's like, what did that look like as they were joining? And what were even some of their challenges too, so that you can really dive into that within the interview process.
Yeah. Culture has a good, I never thought of it that way. That's a good way to think of it because I think when I interview, and one mistake I used to make is I'm evaluating the person to see how much they're like me, which is
Yep.
really kind of arrogant and egotistical instead of thinking what they could add, right? And I think I've interviewed at firms where it's like, are you the, are you one of our people, right?
Mhm.
Which that might not be the right question, right? Because you already have a John Gorup. If I'm already interviewing them, they don't need a clone.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I think a lot of us, when we go unprepared into an interview, that's how the conversation rolls, right? And it's easy to be like,
Yeah,
how are they going to work just like me, in this
yeah,
environment? But like you said, they already have one of us. We need other things. And I think about it in so many different ways. You can look at if folks have taken even like a predictive index or a DISC assessment, for example,
right.
like they don't need all of the same predictive index as me, or boy, we're going to have gaps on a given project or within a given department.
Yeah,
We looked at that on one of the boards that I'm on and realized, wow, well, this explains one of the gaps that we have, and how are we going to fulfill that within our team?
right,
So you can look at it in so many different ways, but it's a great reminder of you need those differences and those adds to the team to
right.
really be a thriving team.
Yeah. And for candidates who are looking for jobs, uh, what mistakes do you consistently see on resumes? And do resumes still matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the need for resumes is going to change, but the ability to showcase what you're going to be able to do and how different experiences translate in your abilities in the future, and how you can talk to that and how you can showcase that is going to matter more so than maybe those bullets on the resume. So I think that's going to really evolve. There's still probably going to be a form of showcasing that. You're going to have to maybe put more on your LinkedIn or have more within the kind of interview process. But I think
Yeah,
the standard resume is going to definitely change. And I think the way that we look at everything, I think there was so much importance on what company did you work at, and,
right.
titles and things like that. I think that's really changing, especially in this market when folks have had to get creative of looking for talent. I think it's really opened eyes of, wow, this person is going to be awesome in this role. I saw a post the other day. This was a SaaS company specifically, but you can insert any. And the person was like, I just hired a teacher that has never been in a sales role in their life, but I can already see that I think they're going to be on the board as a top performer this year. And here's why. And went through all the many reasons of what they've done in the last year and how that is going to translate. And so that wasn't on that person's resume, right? But they looked at what is going to transfer and how that person was able to showcase their ability to do that in the future. So that was an example just last week
Yeah,
that I think just kind of resonated for me of why that's going to change greatly.
yeah. That's a positive change just from what I've
I
heard
agree.
because a lot of times when you interview, it's like, do you have like 5 years of this experience? Well,
Mhm.
no, I have three of this and two of this, and it's kind of it's. I hope the market is changing because of that.
Yeah, I think there's some really cool things like that example that are going to come out of this year. Whenever you go through a more competitive and kind of challenging environment, like I said, it forces you to look at your practices, what you've
Right,
been doing, and say, like, okay, what we've been doing may not work for going
right,
forward and may need to evolve. And you really try some different things that could be things that you're really missing out on, and opportunities that going forward, I think really will stick. So I agree with you.
right. I'm interested in how firms have been affected by COVID as far as getting talent. And one of the things before COVID, it seems like the having an awesome office and like Google and Facebook. firms like that kind of led the way and having like amazing experiences. And I've friends at
Mhm.
those firms, and it just sounds insane. But it seems like that's less of a competitive advantage going forward. My question is, how has the market changed for talent because of COVID, and how can firms distinguish themselves if we're all working from home?
Mhm. It's a great question. I think because both of us have come from a Perio originally, we were kind of an outlier at the time of
Mm,
being, remote first, and what those kind of collaboration and that worker experience really looked like. But I think that's now become a norm of what that looks like now. But I think the most important thing is allowing employees to work how they would like to work. So I think it's
mm,
the reminder that maybe, not every single person appreciated being home every day, but allowing people to work, how they work best and how they want to work, going forward, and
right.
appreciating the flexibility, but also the productivity, that comes with the way they're working more flexibly now. I think in terms of now that that's more level set, because that used to be also, while some office spaces used to be a competitive advantage, companies that offered remote, that could be a competitive advantage as well. And now that's a lot more kind of level set.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to see is, how do folks really showcase their brand? And I think about brand and employment brand as one. So how are they really showcasing? What does that look like to be a part of that? And do I feel a part of that story? And can I see myself there? And what does that, look like to be a part of
Yeah.
that? And, how much are they seeing that regularly? So I always say, just like in marketing, seeing many messages and many different touch points, right? I think it's going to take that candidate many different ways that they're seeing things
Hmm.
about, the company, that get them excited, interested, intrigued, right? To have interest in pursuing. So I think that there's going to need to be a lot more about kind of showcasing, what it's like to be a part of, what you're building, what you're doing, what you're able to do for your clients, and why it's, fun to be a part of, and
Yeah.
what that journey is about. And so, and I think differentiators are going to be more important. Like, you can't just say, we have these benefits and list them and they're the same. I'll go out to a career page and I'm like, cool, that's one of the biggest highlights. And it's like, so do all of your, the places where, folks are going to go to. It's like, what's unique here? What's special
Right.
to be a part of this right here and right now? So I think being able to talk to that, being able to showcase that, and knowing specifically, in the interview process, what is unique, and,
Yeah.
what do your team members share about that?
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned fun at work, and it's, I always think, because I'm old enough that, if I would say that to my parents, they'd be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Right?
Yes.
And my grandparents even more, right? It's just like, you don't go to work to have fun.
Mhm.
But now, like at Atrium, I'm on what's called the culture committee, and part of it is our job. And I joined it kind of on a lark, just because for that fun.
Mhm.
But the more I'm in it, the more I realize how important it is to the company. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, this is serious stuff, right? Because it's kind of, if we don't make this an engaging experience, people are going to leave, right? Because there's a
Mhm.
million companies, right? So fun and culture is so important. My next question is, if you're at a company and you're an employee, how do you know when it's time to leave?
That's a great question. I would say, when, are the conversations you're having with your coworkers about, and again, I'll also kind of clarify fun too as we're going into this next question. Like, fun is not like I, always, had parties or just, did
Right,
these things. It's, do I enjoy the people I work with, what I'm able to do there? I can connect and collaborate. I might have had a fun meeting because I was able to be a part of something that maybe was outside of my day job. And it was fun to be able to talk about that. So I want to
right,
clarify too, like, fun is so many different things at work. So I think sometimes when also, talking to our families, that's part of explaining fun too.
right.
But going into kind of this next part, like, um, so thinking about, fun in that way, I think is super important. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And when is it time to leave the company?
oh,
When it's not
sorry.
fun
Yeah, yeah.
anymore?
I shifted into my fun
Yeah.
question. So I think if you're a good checkpoint too, like if you're talking to coworkers, you're talking to your friends outside of work, and majority of what you're talking about is what you didn't enjoy in your day, what you're not liking being a part of, and you're starting to, have kind of what you would consider more of those toxic conversations. Like we all have a bad day. This is language that you'll resonate with, John, just where we were a part
Yeah.
of. But Chris Barbin always would say, are you having fun 8 out of 10 days? We can't have fun probably 10 out of 10 days. We're humans, and
Yeah.
something happened that day. It could even be personally or professionally, or,
Yeah.
a couple of tough meetings. But are you having fun 8 out of 10 days? When you're not over a given kind of month or period of time, it's a great checkpoint to be like, why? Could I have a conversation internally to make it 8 out of 10? Because maybe I'm not on
Yeah.
the right seat on the bus.
Right.
Maybe I could be working with kind of a different team. What is that? And first checkpoint, is there an opportunity to do that within your given team or organization, or have a conversation? If not, and it's not the right organization and culture for you, that's a
Yeah.
great opportunity. But first checkpoint, what are the reasons? What are those
Right.
conversations you're having? Do you have an opportunity to change and impact those? Because if you just go to a new organization and part of it's on you, and you don't
Yes.
checkpoint, like, what could you do to change that thing? You're now just having it at a different company and then saying, like, why is this the same experience a few months in? So I'd say use those tools to checkpoint why and what's really impacting that. And again, how can you personally make change? And if you can't, then how do you look at what the right next opportunity is?
That's really good advice because, yeah, if you're at a place and you're kind of stagnant, it could be because of the firm or it could be because of you,
Hmm.
right? And people are quick to blame the firm. And if it's you and you move to another firm, you're just going to stagnate with a different logo.
Yep.
I think of that with moving too. Like if you don't enjoy where you live, people think, oh, I'm going to move to Arizona. My life's going to be completely different. Well, it's still you,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's
And what is the why? Like, what are you really looking at, doing differently by doing that? And,
right,
again, what are the reasons outside of just I don't like where I'm at today, right? It's,
right.
what are you really looking for? And can you define that?
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of the big economy and hiring, inflation's out of hand, and so the temptation is to move for a bigger salary. Um, my question, and this is always awkward, and it's awkward for me whenever I'm get a new job, which hasn't been that often. How should a candidate think about salary? And I especially hear it with women that women are kind of timid about negotiation,
Mhm.
and on the macro level, it affects women's wages. But how should and then on the flip side, how should firms think about
Mhm.
uh, pay?
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic right now because I feel like both the candidate or employee and the firm are all kind of struggling with this topic right now. Like, what is transparency? Where is it productive? How do
Right.
I make it productive? Like, what should we be paying? What does that look like? How can I make sure, especially talking about services firms, like there
Yeah.
is a math equation, right? So you can't
Yeah.
just pay any amount of money and not impact your clients and the margins on a day-to-day basis, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's a reminder of there's many factors towards these decisions. But in terms of like what I would tell candidates in this market is, what I appreciate, I think, of their thought process right now is they no longer want to get a discount for the work and value that they're bringing. And so, if
Right.
we as employers think about their lens as that, then it's like, okay, I can respect and appreciate. Where I think sometimes conversations before were like, but be a part of here and take a 30K, decrease in pay, but it's going to be really, really fun. And I think that candidates right now are like, I appreciate and I'm excited about. It's going to be really, really fun, but I need to be at the value of the work that I'm doing. What I
Right.
would tell candidates though is, think about this is the business and what that they're doing, and what is value and what makes sense versus just value plus 50K in this market and that not being sustainable going forward. And, what really, makes sense in terms of those conversations and not just one data point out on a website that one person submitted their, crowdsourced comp data to. I think that's, a challenging conversation, right? So
Yeah.
I would say if we both kind of look at it from the lens of value for the work that they're providing, and it's all level set, no matter any demographic group, and all level set on the value of that role, and being more prepared for those conversations as an organization of what is your comp philosophy? How do you look at pay and paid decisions and all of that? I think it puts us in a better position. What I will tell candidates right now is we appreciate that pay is important and I respect and appreciate that. But also sometimes there have been, we're all reaching out and sourcing and trying to connect with candidates. And I know that you're getting like 17 messages a day as a candidate right now. And I appreciate that. But I would say sometimes with the messages back that just say, what is the pay? Maybe share a little bit more of like, what does that mean to you and why, like, why that's important to understand right up front versus maybe just that period question mark. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. And I think if we as employers really understand where the candidates are coming from right now in this market, and if candidates also understand where employers are coming from right now in this market, and that they have to really look holistically at their entire team and company and all of that, and they appreciate that there needs to be something to make a move, but they also want it to be sustainable. So I would
Right.
look kind of at both those lenses in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were both at Aperio, and I think Chris Barbin, I've talked about this before on the podcast, one of his main skills is just finding talent and hiring people. Um, what did you learn in your time at Aperio, both positive and negative?
Yeah, so many things. And 5 years feels like 15 years of experience, I think back to, because I feel like with our growth stage and scale and the people that I had an opportunity to get to work with, I feel like, again, feels like 15 years of experience within
Yeah.
the five. But I think learnings in terms of what's needed at different stages of the business changes. So when
Yeah.
you're looking at talent and hiring talent, what you might have needed early on, startup to scale up, call it stage, to what you needed as you had already, really kind of gotten to that scale stage and are looking at that next phase, or maybe even, post acquisition or different things. There's different experiences, different leadership, different qualities that you're looking for at different stages. And I think that was something I really learned and kind of understood. And I think that was something that Chris really, modeled and understood as well. So I would say that's something in terms of talent. I think the way we looked at the importance of onboarding into the organization, and the fact that that early experience really translates to how quickly you can get ramped within the organization, connected within the organization, because those connections are what's going to add to that fun, right? I have more people that I have the opportunity to learn, work across, ask questions. And so I think that onboarding experience is huge. Gosh, I learned a ton from an international experience. I will say that's an area where I would say there is a million times over opportunities to learn. I think there's a lot more available in this market to make hiring and retaining teams in other geographies, which I'm
Yeah.
happy about, because that I feel like that was a barrier, an obstacle when we go back 5 years ago. There were things that made that a lot more complex. And so I think there's a lot more opportunity to build in that way, and a lot more tools and things out there to do that.
Yeah. 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 It was quite a journey. Um,
So many other things, but a few highlights there.
so many other things, right? So what made you start Cultivate Talent? I understand it's just you, but what services do you offer?
Yeah. So what made me start was realizing that there is so much that happens in, like I said, that early stage of the business. And a lot of times companies may be looking to hire that kind of experienced talent leader more at a series A or a funding stage, right? Where there's cash in the bank. And but there's such a need and interest to have someone early on. So I wanted
Right.
to offer an opportunity to be a fractional talent leader and offer those services without the requirement to need to hire that full time or at a full time rate. So that was one of the huge needs and opportunities that I saw, especially in this market. So I do kind of this fractional talent leadership, coming alongside talent leaders that I have a few that I'm working with that maybe were a recruiter or were inside of the business and they had a passion for being in a talent leadership role and they have super high potential, but maybe we aren't set up with all the right tools for success today. So being able to support as an advisory and coach for those leaders, and then recruiting strategy, and then hiring those talent and talent acquisition leaders to support those teams in that growth path. That's kind of the main focus area, and really just helping from a leadership development standpoint for those executive and CEO leaders looking to grow and scale that business.
Yeah. So smaller firms can get a piece of Julie's mind without hiring you full time
There you go. Yes.
and benefit from your experience and
Yeah.
what you've
But
seen
it's
in the
a lot of
market.
fun to get to work across all of those businesses. I feel like, gosh, am I
Yeah.
learning and growing from seeing so many different business strategies and how they're looking at their talent and people strategy alongside of that.
Yeah.
Um, and so getting to work with over 20 companies the last year and getting to see those different decision points and how they're
Yeah.
looking at growing their business. Gosh, that adds to the toolkit for me for sure as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of anxiety about hiring, and rightly so, right? The especially at a small firm, a bad hire will set you back a lot, you know.
Yes.
So what do you do when you're not changing the world of technology talent?
I have twin 11-year-olds. So they are in that kind of sports stage. And so activities and shared as we were joining, my daughter is in cheer. So cheer competition land, and
Right.
my son's playing soccer right now. So he is goalie, and that is, he loves it. It's super fun. I thought, oh, good, soccer, not football. And he has probably more injuries than most football players, but he loves it. It's super fun. And we are enjoying this stage of them just kind of figuring out passions and enjoying that. So, a lot keeping busy with that. Last week, I was able to go on a trip with friends and just catch up on life. So,
Wow.
that was a lot of fun. Sometimes I would say, you look at the calendar and say, I don't think we can make it work. And you know what? Make it work. Take the trip, catch up with friends, do it if you can. It was such a fun week. So that's a couple things going on in life right now.
Fantastic. Well, being a parent is all consuming, you know, a lot of taking kids places and things like that. So it's been great to catch up with you, Julie. I wish you all the luck in the world, and I love the sign too.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So good to catch up. And thanks for having me, John. I so appreciate it. And good to
Yes.
start my Monday with you.
All right. Yes. Have a great week, Julie.
All
Thank you so
right.
much. Take
Thanks.
care. Bye.
Bye.